Alright, so for this video, I want to try a different format. Rather than recording while I'm bossing, I want to do a voiceover over it because I want to have a more concise point to make, a more concise video without too much rambling, and try to get my point across better. So let's give this a try. This patch added a lot of things to the Star Force system. We have a couple additions, such as stars don't reduce, boom chance is higher, but it's the same as on event. There's less variance, and more importantly, it goes to 30 stars. So I want to go over a concept that I've observed in this game and how it relates to the health of the game and the issues surrounding endgame progression. Like we also have two important events recently. This is the Shining Star Force and Cube Sale. So I want to talk about that as well. So my premise to you is that the game is in a bad state if too many people reach the soft cap. So what do I mean by the soft cap? Loosely, it means full 22, full 3 line, completed hexa, settled flames, let's say settled. I wouldn't say like perfect, ridiculous flames, but settled flames, and 290 plus. So reaching this, despite some people thinking, is very achievable for everyone. Pre-patch, I would argue it was almost too achievable. In Heroic, there are less avenues of progression than in Interactive. So in a weird way, in my opinion, it's a little contentious, but in my opinion, the systems should have been flipped. Interactive should have gotten the FD passive for free, and this would have lessened the financial burden of progressing in Interactive. And Heroic should have gotten more upgrade systems to work on. So it is harder to progress in Interactive because there's more systems to progress in. And on the flip side, Heroic is easier to progress, but it has much less systems. So anyway, what is the soft cap? What determines this like quote unquote soft cap? Arbitrary soft cap. So here's another term I want to introduce, is the failsafe, the overflow system. It's the failsafe overflow system. It's the upper ceiling where there's always something to do, and that perfection is almost impossible to feasibly chase. In other games, like ARPGs, this is achieved by variable rolls. So hitting a perfect max rolled gear with all the desired specs and everything is not practical. In those games, usually hitting the majority of the roll, like maybe like 95% of the roll with perfect specs, is quote unquote perfect. Even though it's not, it is perfect. The hard cap is what the actual game defined limit is. So it would be a completely max roll, a perfect capped max roll. In MapleStory, a hard cap would be full 30 stars, triple prime, level 300, 1010 hexastat, main stat. It's not useful. A hard cap is not a useful metric other than defining what the cap is, the actual hard cap, but it's not useful for like a practical sense. So in MapleStory, the overflow systems are the following for each major upgrade system. The double prime for potentials, double prime for bonus potentials, 23 stars and up for Star Force, this was pre-patch, perfect chaos scrolling for scrolls, T7 flames for flaming, 9 to 10 main stat hexastat for fragments, and 296, level 296 for leveling, 296 plus for leveling. So in Heroic, we don't have two of those systems available because we don't have scrolls and we don't have bonus potentials. But in Interactive, they have everything. The longest standing issue in Heroic was that it was too easy to hit the soft cap in those systems, and it put you into the zone of the overflow systems. So the overflow systems are not meant to be chased after. They only exist as a failsafe to have an asymptotal point to where no one can achieve it. So the people that do chase them are the Leviathan Giga Whales in KMS Rec, or popular KMS streamers that can regularly achieve like 5-figure sums for a single item, either through donations or whatever. So ideally in reg server, an overflow system, like that progression, is almost never practical because there's always something else to do. There's always a more efficient way to progress. Because there's so many systems available, the idea of double priming a piece of gear is ridiculously inefficient if you still had other gains to make. So for example, why would you double prime one piece of gear when you only have 2-line in another piece of gear, or the equivalent 2-line in, like, say, another system entirely? You would never double prime something because it's just too inefficient. In Heroic, however, with so many less systems, it was much easier to achieve the soft cap because you could funnel more resources into fewer systems. And the benefit of Heroic was that it was very easy to hit the soft cap. But the detriment is that it put you into the overflow systems too quickly. And the overflow systems are the most miserable progression systems in the game. So as Wonky put it, you are not meant to go for 23 stars. Said by the old director before Changsup, before him, he said that you're not meant to go for 23 stars. And yet, Heroic regularly tries to achieve this system. They regularly try to progress in these overflow systems. So this next section is my design analysis. So I want to name it my analysis and not the analysis because all of this is just my opinion. I don't think it's a perfect criticism of the game. It's just my view on the health of the game and how I personally view it. So take that as you will. So the game is bad when more and more people hit these overflow systems. So when people hit the soft cap, the game gets worse. So if you hit these overflow systems, it means the game has run out of things for you to do. It means it's the game's failure in giving you something to do. It has to lean on these overflow systems to give you something to do because there is nothing left to do. It is the fail-safe of the game. It is not the main progression path. So for an example, let's analyze the potential system. So like as an example, for an accessory, as a like cubing an accessory, 21% stat is like a quarter bill, 1/4 of a bill. So that's a real 2-line is about a quarter bill. 27% stat, a fake 3-line is 1.5 bill. So not that much more for 6% stat. 30% stat, which is a real 3-line, is 4.5 bill. So 3 times the cost for 3% more stat. Still, that's pretty hefty for some people, but it's still achievable. And then finally, 33% stat, which is a real double prime. So 12-12-9 or 12-9-12 is 46 bill median. So it's 10 times the cost of a real 3-line. So if we use a 2-line as a baseline floor that everyone should have, gaining 6% stat only costs 1.5 bill. Gaining 9% stat is 4.5 bill, but gaining 12% stat is 46 bill. So it ramps up real quick. So just looking intuitively, we can easily observe that the soft cap is 9% stat. 12% stat is more than 10 times the cost of 9% stat. Very, very easy to look. In reg server, even though you would never chase this like in any practical sense, but we'll just use it as an example, the cost of double priming is 2,050 black cubes median, which is off sale $4.5 thousand. So again, you would never do this. You would just buy it from someone who happened to hit it. It's not like no one ever chases this. I just wanted to use this as an example to illustrate why it's just impractical. There's no world where you would spend $4.5 thousand for such a little game normally for a normal person. So heroic gameplay, therefore, is similar to a Camus Leviathan spending thousands of dollars on this miserable chance at 3% stat. So if you think about it, only the very select few people crazy enough to spend unfathomable amounts of money on this is actually just normal gameplay in Heroic. So this is just for accessories. When we go to the WSE, it's even more grim. Like, for example, a weapon, 3-line attack is about, it's about 38 bill median. Double prime is 400 bill median. So that is more miso than a lot of players will ever see, which is kind of crazy. For many people, this 400 bill median is the great filter that stops players from playing. This is the epitome of overflow systems at play, where people must plan months or a year in advance for a high variance, high cost, low return upgrade. And as a side note, this is why potable badge is always a topic of contention, even now, years after they were discontinued. Any player at the soft cap will suddenly have an opinion on having access to a free piece of gear that gives them 10 double primes worth of stat for free. And the more people that hit the soft cap, the more people pay attention to the badge. That would cost them $500 billion in funding to achieve normal. It's like when you're rich, you suddenly have an opinion on taxes and capital gains. But before that, you didn't care at all. It's kind of like a weird real life relatable thing. When you're not at the soft cap, you don't really care about this badge. But when you are at the soft cap, suddenly you have an opinion. So the next section is it really that bad? So I want to make it clear right away that I'm not saying that these incremental gains, like these miserable low return gains, I'm not saying they're nothing. I'm sure a lot of late to endgame players are thinking when they're watching, that's so much damage. Oh my god, 3% stat is crazy. Or they say something like, I can make that median really quickly. I make 80 to 100 bill a week. That's nothing. So first, yes, I know, double primes add up. If you had 10 double primes, that's like a second potable badge. That's a lot of damage for free. But the point of this is that it's the progression path itself and where the soft ceiling exists for the majority of the player base, and not for the min-maxers that would willingly participate in the overflow system. Gear treadmills like MapleStory want you to progress even a little bit every day to get you to come back. This is how ARPGs operate in many MMOs. Even MapleStory itself operates this way, in KMS and interactive. However, MapleStory is primarily designed with KMS in mind, not GMS interactive, and especially not GMS heroic. If a system hits a limit, or the market gets out of control, the KMS devs will directly address it. Nexon historically monitored important items in the market, such as nodes, frags, scrolls, spares, like pitched, and the market value of every finished equip. So Nexon has curbed inflation when they needed to. They do it by nerfing or limiting income, like boss crystals, historically. This is because as the game gets older, the floor of power becomes much higher. Players will be able to clear more and more content than they were able to before, and thus they will get more income, more spares, more resources. Even in this challenge world, people have liberated in just a couple weeks. Something that would have taken like a year, almost a year. Now people are at the doorstep of late game. So the problem that exists now is that as the power floor rises, the ceiling isn't rising at the same rate. More and more people are hitting the soft cap in heroic. And so when people hit the soft cap, they will hit this overflow system wall, and the gameplay suffers as a result. My opinion is that there should be more systems to work on. And maybe this is an unpopular hot take, but I think heroic should also have the other missing systems from interactive, like scrolls and bonus potentials, in exchange for the FD passive. I know that's a little bit controversial, but I think giving up the passive and having the other systems available would make the game better. It would take a lot of work, but it would give people more things to do at the end game. So bonus potentials in particular are extremely difficult to hit soft cap. It is one of the most highest variance non-overflow activities in the game, but ironically, I would think that's a good thing, because I think it's better gameplay for the average player to perfect their bonus pots than it is to double prime a WSE. I think it's just better. It's smoother gameplay than to try to double prime a WSC. So the next system is the Star Force system. There was a big change with the Star Force system recently. Star Force got a lot of different QOL improvements, but the most important feature was that it raised the cap to 30 stars for like level 140 equips. I think it's 138, but let's say 140. This pushed the soft cap even further for the Star Force system specifically. So this is a good change. This is a good change as a whole because 22 was relatively too easy to hit on the scale of playing this game for years. So I know that people think 22 is difficult, and I personally know how difficult it is because I've willingly done it on many characters on full 22. But on the scale of playing this game for years, it is too quick. You just hit 22 too quickly, and there's nothing left to do other than to try to hit 23 stars, which is ridiculous. So there are issues with the new system, with like spares, backups, laddering, but that's not really the points I want to talk about. But it is a step forward to improving the game at the end game. However, I think there needs to be more. Star Force is inherently a time-gated system in Heroic. This means that it has a lot more in common with symbol dailies than it does with like cubing or flames or hexa stat. It's similar to dailies. The progression path of star forcing is metered and spread over time. This is a measure to stop people from hitting the soft cap too quickly. But like with all time-gated systems, there is a certain level of like futility, like helplessness, let's say. When a system is time-gated, people don't have agency over their progression. It is instead dictated by Nexon on when you're allowed to progress. You don't really get to decide when you can progress a Star Force. You have to be dictated by Nexon on when you're allowed to progress in Star Force. So the only system in the game that expanded the soft cap is artificially time-gated, so that the new soft cap is much slower to reach by hard preventing players unable to participate in it. This is also exacerbated by the nature of Star Force events, which is another topic for another video. But very quickly, Star Force events, specifically the 30% boom chance reduction, is inherently bad. For players. It is an unnecessary time gate burden for every player that feels compelled to pause games and only increment their Star Force progress only when Nexon dictates it. So although Star Forcing is better, it is more tightly controlled than ever. The point of this video is to share my thoughts on the Maple endgame. I think many endgame players agree that MapleStory has a problem at the endgame with this specific problem. Maybe framed differently, but this is just the way I framed it. But for players in the sweats that push cutting edge, the gameplay of Heroic is suffering, and it is up to Nexon to at least alleviate the problems. Sadly, if I were in Nexon's shoes, I think that it isn't actually that important to improve this part of the game. Like, I would put more resources and attention to player acquisition and make more players play the game rather than retaining the tiny population at the top. And this is just something I wanted to share and why I feel the game can feel bad at times. Like, the game is at its best when you're below the soft cap. The gains come so readily and you feel like you're progressing every day and making great strides every time you play. But once you hit the soft cap, that's when the great filter happens. And you have to make a decision. Some players continue and they push those overflow systems. Some players start new characters just to experience that progression again, like that ready, easy progression again. And then some people quit or they take a break, which isn't good. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.